So thank you all for coming. A lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces too. And I appreciate everybody coming out on arguably the coldest night of the year in the middle of a global pandemic. So you guys are diehard. I appreciate it. What we're hoping to accomplish tonight is basically try and condense what we're learning in ABC throughout the year, because we've had a lot of interest from neighbors, friends, family, where they want to come out and kind of see what we're doing. And so this is our first public event ever where it's open to anybody, and we really appreciate you all coming and joining us on our inaugural night. So when we started this program in 2012, I'll never forget it. I walked in and I asked the students kind of, what do you want to talk about? And they go, well, tell us about what you do. We want to learn how to make money. And because I work with the markets, and I'm like, okay, well, here's how the stock market works, and this is what you do. But it wasn't interesting. But then they asked, well, tell me how you got to where you are. And I'm like, well, that's interesting, because that's networking. And then that's getting an internship. And that's finding mentors. And most importantly, it's about building a group of people that love and care about you, and you celebrate in each other's success. That's basically what a network is. And I hear it all the time, especially among young people. We want to make money. We want to get rich. And, you know, money is associated. You're lucky if you have money. If you have money, you've got privilege. Now, money does provide optionality, meaning it gives you options. It gives you flexibility. But I would argue money is not the most important thing that you want in life. I'd argue a network is more important. Because when you look at money and a network next to each other, let's think about this. Money comes and goes. You make money, you spend money. You win money, you lose money. You invest money, it goes up, it goes down. A job pays you money, the job goes away. A group of people, a true group of people, I'm talking about true network, and I'm not talking 100,000 followers on LinkedIn or 50,000 followers on Instagram. That's not a true network. I'm talking one person is all you need in your network that loves and supports, you trust. That is more powerful than money. Money can take you down a very dark path. Money can derail you. Money doesn't have your best intentions. Because remember, money comes and goes. It doesn't care about you. But a network, when constructed properly, is the bumpers on a bowling alley. When you start to deviate a little to the left, that bumper brings you back. When you start going to the right, it brings you back. That network is there, and it has your best interest in mind. Now, most importantly, I'm sure we've all thought about it, money is not going to remember you when you're gone. Money's moved on. Money's already gone. Your network, the people that you surround yourself with, the people that you help. Now, you got to understand, for a good network to work, it's give and take. All right? So you are giving a piece of yourself by helping other people in your network. They will remember you. So when you start to think money's the most important thing, I disagree, because a network is sustainable forever. And if you put your network together properly, money is a byproduct of it. If you have a strong network where you're working and you're collaborating and you're sharing ideas and information and relationships, money will follow. If you build a network off of having money, the people that are in that network are going to be there for your money. And guess what? They're going to come and go just like that money does. So when I talk to my students, I go, forget money. It's too early to think about it. Now, money, again, I go back. Money is important. It provides flexibility and optionality. But money is not the first thing you need to start building early on in your life. And that's what we want to talk about. Because how do we build a network? Tonight, we're talking about first impressions. And that's what our program is. We're teaching students how to advance and network in a progressive manner. We aren't doing the basics of investing and tax mitigation in the first class. That's actually class 11. That's the second to last class we do. We're doing first impressions. But I'll tell you, after these last 2 years, there's something more important that actually comes before first impressions, which is what everybody thinks is the most important start to building a network. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it, because I know it's a topic that's been coming up for a lot of people coming out of this pandemic, and that is mental health. Okay? Mental health. Understanding your mental health, understanding why you feel that way is vital. And I'll tell you right now, for me, I deal with it. So I'm up here telling you, especially the students, if you feel like you're dealing with struggles mentally, understand you're not alone. Because that's the first step in helping identify what the underlying problem is. You are not alone. My mother taught me early on, and I think it's because we're an Italian family, you've got to talk about it. The rule number one to trying to get your head right is talk to someone. Because if you don't talk to somebody about it, it's just going to sit internal with you. The second rule is you figure out how to change the channel. And I'm going to explain this in a little bit about how I've actually implemented this. But you got to change the channel. You got to reframe whatever you're thinking. And then the third and final step is reflect and develop self-awareness. Understand where you are with everything. Okay? So if we look here, and I am going to screw this up, this is an iceberg. I know it's in like black and white and kind of washed out, but it's an iceberg. A fun fact about icebergs is 90% of the iceberg sits submerged, out of sight, underwater. Only 10% of that massive ice rock is above the surface and can be seen. Again, I'm using this as my own therapy. I am talking to you about my mental health. I have voices. There are voices all around. And there's two types of voices that I deal with. The first is the internal voices, and then the second is the external voices. And guess what makes up a majority of what I'm hearing? All right here. All internal. And now when you get stuck in these internal voices, and if you've heard it before, I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail, I'm not ready for this, it's not going to be right, I'm not prepared. Do you know what the 5 most derailing words that I think have ruined more great ideas than anything else? What will other people think? What will other people think? I thought about that as I was literally walking on stage. What are people going to think about this? That's a really loud internal voice. And again, for all the young people in here, you're not alone. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because it's especially for the young people in here, you have been robbed of 2 years of socialization. From ages 13 to 24, I would argue that is the most important age range to develop how to interact. And it's not how to be the most popular cool kid, it's how do I act in a group? What's socially acceptable? How do I make somebody else like me, or how do I like them? How do I want to be treated? How should I treat other people? The way you learn that is through interacting, and you've been robbed. And you've been socially stunted as a result of it. And it's not just you, it's an entire generation that's been socially stunted. So if we can figure out how to master some of these skills, you young people that are in the audience, your peers aren't doing this right now. You're going to be ahead of the game. because you're going to figure out how to bring the pieces together. Now, the external voices, don't get me started. That's the media. It's friends, it's family. It's the media. COVID-19, recession, stock market crash, isolation, racism, violence, desperation, plane crash. You know what's funny about the media is they don't ever report when planes land safely. 99.999% of the time, the planes land safely. And the reason they don't report on that is because it doesn't grab attention. That is not the revenue model of mainstream media. They need to grab our attention. And I do truly think it's an evolutionary kind of thing that we have buried inside of us. We need to know where the threats and the danger is because we've evolved to this point. And so I understand why humans are drawn to the negativity because it's in our nature to know what's going on. But those external voices, man, they get loud. And you'll find out those external voices seep into our internal space, and then we can't get rid of them. So what does this all mean for first impressions? Well, if you talk to a lot of the students here, there isn't a formal curriculum for this class. We're not like trying to sell a book. We don't have like a 12-chapter course on how to do this. Literally, we get together once a month, and I'm like, hey guys, this happened to me last week. Let me tell you about it. I'm literally just trying to disseminate and share my life experiences with the students and figure it out. This iceberg is very much embedded in me when I was 13, 14, all the way up to 25, and it still is. The voices haven't gone away. The one thing I've gotten a little better at is trying to control the voices, right? Talk to somebody, reframe it, reflect. So I started at the firm I'm currently with. I was 18, and I started in the mailroom, and the internal voices were loud. I was one of like 7 interns, and I was the only one in the mailroom. Everybody else was out on the floor. They were working with other advisory teams. They were working doing more important stuff. I was in the mailroom. And God, looking back on it, God bless I was, because it was a learning experience. And my voices were loud, as always. You're not smart enough. You shouldn't be here. What are you doing here? It was in there. So I fought through it. And then I graduated in 2008. And about 2 to 3 weeks in, I sat down and I had kind of an informal review. I was super eager. I wanted to learn, like, what do I got to do to make it? You know, again, these internal voices were nagging at me, but I'm like, nah, I'm going to push. So I sit down with this guy. He wasn't like a big man. He was just like kind of almost like a peer, but he had been there longer, which was my first mistake, probably listening to him. But I sit down and I talk to him. And I got my pen and paper ready. I'm ready to take notes. I'm ready to learn about it. And he goes, all right, Nick, I'm going to level with you. I go, oh, yeah, what? He goes, you come across as kind of aggressive. And I'm like, what? Like aggressive question mark. I'm like, okay, tell me more. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I come across as kind of aggressive. I'm like, okay. And I kid you not, this is a true story. He goes, and also, you're a little rough around the edges. You can tell you're from the South Side. Is right. He said that to me. I'm like, what? No, I didn't do that. But I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't even mad. I wasn't even mad because I didn't even know what it meant. I had to Google rough around the edges. I had no idea what he was even talking about. And then he's talking about where I grew up. I'm like, what is this? So you want to talk about an external voice seeping in? I was deep underwater. I don't even think I had 10% remaining. I think everything was internal. I didn't even hear what was going on in the world. So I'm like, well, what do I do? And this is before I started to kind of figure out, all right, how do you deal with these internal voices? So I tried to self-correct. I tried to fix it myself inside my own head. And I go, okay, all right, well, I'm aggressive. all right, I'll stop going up to people in the water cooler and introducing myself, and I'll stop, kind of like sitting in the front row at all the big, investment meetings. I'll just sit in the back, and I won't approach people, and maybe I won't come across as aggressive. I'm like, okay, that works. And then I was like, well, God, how do I not be so rough around the edges and be from the South Side, where I'm from? So I'm like, well, my buddies in college, they used to call me Chicago because I had a really strong Chicago accent. It's probably the way I talk. So I started to talk very deliberate, very slow, no accent. So I'm like, I got to change something. I got to talk to somebody. I'm like, I got to do it. And this is what my mother always taught me growing up. You got to talk to somebody. So first mentor I go to, his name is Bernie Del Giorno. Some of you have met Bernie. I met Bernie about 10 years ago. So when I first met Bernie at the firm, we did not know each other, and he's been in the business for a very long time. He's 90 years old. He was born in 1931 in the middle of the Great Depression. He's seen like 8 wars and 20 presidents. The guy's been around the block. And he responds to everything in quotes. And so I go, Bernie, I didn't tell him about the conversation that I had. I go, Bernie, what do you do if somebody is too aggressive? And he looks at me, and this is how Bernie responds. He goes, well, aggressive? He goes, well, it's a lot easier to pull the reins on a lion uphill than it is to push a donkey. And I'm like, it is easier to do that. I'm not a donkey. And so what I did is I reframed it. So I talked to somebody. He told me it was not better, but he said it's easier to mentor and develop somebody that has the go for it. And I'm like, I'm not aggressive. I have energy. I'm high energy. All right, Bernie, thank you. All right, I feel better. But again, rough around the edges. From the South Side, I didn't know how to deal with that. So I called one of the guys that I respected that worked downtown. And I wish he could be here tonight. And by the way, Bernie's not here tonight. I wish Bernie could be here, and I wish this gentleman could be here too. A man named Tom Fahey. And if any of you are from the CK neighborhood or from Beverly, Tom Fahey is one of my first mentors. And I go out to lunch with Tom. And I go, Tom. And I didn't, again, tell him anything. I go, Tom, what if somebody didn't want to do business with you or didn't like you because you were from the South Side? And I'll never forget, and Tom probably doesn't even remember this. He was eating his soup. He goes, Nick, I wouldn't do business with anybody that thought that way. And I was like, oh, that's fantastic. It made me feel so good. I'm like, yeah, I don't have to do with business with people that think that way. Tom made me feel better. So then when I think, oh, I'm rough around the edges and maybe, I'm from the South Side, then I reframed it. And I'm like, you know what? All these other guys I am in this program with, I'm gritty. I'm gritty. I have gritty energy. I reframe that thing in my head. Now, whether that's right or wrong, whether people believe it or not, what matters is up here, how you feel. How is that going to impact you? So I changed the channel, and I reflected. And I'll tell you, it was about 2 years to the day where I started ABC. And I went back to St. Rita, my alma mater. That's where I started. I literally was standing on like a milk crate, just like talking, and whoever showed up, showed up. I started talking about it. And I realized that people are like, why did you start it? And looking back on it, I started it because I was angry. I was mad. Because I was mad that one person thought that. I embedded in my head that that's how everybody thought about the South Side. And it made me angry. And I vowed to myself, I am going to go back and I am going to bring as many kids as I possibly can into this situation that I just barely got through and figured out. Because what you got to realize, what we're ultimately, to sum ABC up, there is this door. All right, so imagine this door right here. The first 3 years of my career as an intern, I walked right by this door. No idea this door even existed. I'd walk by it. And then I started to kind of like figure out, I'm like, what is this thing? And then I started looking into it. I'm like, what's in the door? And I saw there was a lot of people in there shaking hands, doing different stuff. And then the door cracked open and I slid my foot in. And I went in. And I wanted to figure out what was going on in there. And I call this door, it's the door to the room of opportunity, which is life. And it doesn't just have to be business, but it's the room of opportunity where you can build and develop and network and collaborate with people. So I slide in and I go into this room. And guess what I found out works in that room with all these different people, all different backgrounds, nationalities, professions. Gritty energy works. Gritty energy helps in that room. And I kind of figured out how to work around that room. But the thing that I did not do is I did not sit in the middle of that room and just reap all the benefit. And this is what I drive home to our ABC students. I figured out, okay, this room works. I walked right back to that door that I came in, and I whipped it off the hinges, and I pushed it open. And now I'm holding this door open. And there were kids that were lined up out here. I go, okay, listen, you're going in this room, all right? Here's how you're going to operate. First thing, first impressions. Here's how you shake hands. Here's how you're going to conversation pivot in your small talk. Then after the small talk, you're going to get their business card. Then you're going to send a handwritten thank you follow-up. You're going to write them an email follow-up on top of that. And then you're going to introduce that person to somebody else you meet. Go. 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 We are trying to shove as many kids into that room of opportunity. But here is the price of admission. And this is what I tell every kid that comes through this. Once you get into that middle of the room and you figure out how to navigate it, don't you dare just sit in that room. You go find a closed door, you open it up the same way I did, and you get all the kids that are standing outside that door in with us. That's the price of admission. You pay it forward. You pay it forward. And by the way, when you get in that room, there's some people wearing an ABC logo. Go find them. Those are Sherpas. There's professionals, mentors that help out our network. Go find the people with the ABC logo and network with them. That's what we're trying to accomplish.